trying to make me.
Unless it's Ghostbusters 2. I think in Ghostbusters 2, you're allowed to cross the streams.
I think it's going, but I also think that the glitching is probably going to happen here at the beginning, and hopefully it'll sort itself out. I'm going to close down things to try to save RAM. I'm going to make sure that stuff is sending a signal. I mean, it says it's sending a signal. I closed the window that tells me whether or not it's a good one. So we're just going to hang out here at the beginning and talk about random BS for a few minutes while we wait and see if this thing's actually working. So, Brew, hey, happy last live Friday of the season.
I'm a little nostalgic already.
It's weird.
I might shed a tear or two.
It's very weird. I don't...
Now, are we? I know we have some scheduling issues we have to go over, with all the stuff that's going on in the off season, but so there's going to be Friday shows, and if I'm on them, do we still get to do them live, or are we just being like, yeah, screw you all?
I think it's going to be recorded. I mean, we could try to do a live one. My guess is that maybe we could do like one live one a month, something like that, because if it's every week, I think people are probably going to be like, what am I doing? But if it's once a month, then you and I can talk about all sorts of fully incoherent... That's what they come for, is the madness.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, we're a community, Dan. We're not just fantasy. We're a way of life.
That's true. Getting your ball hooped is a way of life.
I love that slogan. We're not going to be able to keep it, but I love that slogan.
Get your ball hooped.
Get your ball hooped.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the other one that you threw out there was enough fantasy info to kill you.
Well, that was when we're selling the draft guide, and it is technically enough fantasy information to kill you with, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
In the off season, not so much.
No, that's all right. We'll talk about Jumanji. We'll talk about.
Well, I really want to talk about the Gary Shandling show or the Gary Shandling Diaries.
Okay, tell me about them now while I'm waiting to see if our stream actually improves at all.
I just think that you should watch it. That's all I got there.
I wonder why this isn't... Oh, man, I'm not getting any error messages from my actual encoder, but the YouTube page is saying that it's like not sending enough video. I don't even know what that means. Does that mean that I needed to actually increase the bit rate? That I went too low to save power? I don't know. Anyway, tell me about Gary Shandling. He's dead, I think.
Oh, yeah. So he just passed, but Judd Apatow did this really well done documentary. I didn't know much about Judd Apatow other than like his movies are funny, and some of them are classics. Like I think he did Anchorman.
He did. I know he did 40-Year-Old Virgin.
All those movies.
Knocked Up. This is 40. I think those are all Apatow. Bean says it's running fine, so good for us. I'm gonna roll with that. Anyway, tell me about Gary Shandling. If Bean
says it's running fine, then it's running fine, Dan.
All right, sweet. Okay.
Stand down, Dan.
Can I tell you a dirty little secret? It's not that dirty. It's just I guess it's just a little secret. I often get Gary Shandling and Gene Shalit confused.
What's great about that is, like, I'd say 50 to maybe even 75% of our audience doesn't know who Gary Shandling is, and at least 99% of them do not know who Gene Shalit is.
Please Google Gene Shalit. He's going to be a way funnier Google than Gary Shandling, for those of you that are tuning into this program. Way funnier, because Gene Shalit had the mustache. The mustache was like magical caricature.
Is he still alive?
I have no idea.
Because if he's still alive, he's got a great shot at working for Trump with that mustache.
That is all. Dude, Bolton, is that the mustache guy? That's a hell of a stash. Gene Shalit is alive. He's 92.
Trump's entire council, across the board. In fact, the people that don't have mustaches, how they got their jobs is they put on fake mustaches, did a headshot, sent them in. It's like, I too look like Ty Cobb.
And here, not the baseball player who notorious racist, I believe, was the word on Ty Cobb. Maybe they debunked that. I don't remember. I'll have to.
I doubt it.
I don't know.
This thing was pretty interesting because I didn't know anything about Judd Apatow, and it was kind of like take you behind the scenes in the comedy world of how people get their start. And so he was a writer for Shandling, and they just write a lot of jokes, and some of it was just hilarious. Like there was a show that Chris Rock and Seinfeld and Shandling did, and all three of them kill it. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in it, but he was a crazy basketball guy. So like in his final kind of weeks before a sorry, I'm getting a direct message here. I think somebody wants me to do something I cannot do.
Oh no.
Yeah.
You'll have to tell me off air afterwards.
It's Spritzer over at Wager Talk.
Oh, good. I thought it was like somebody wants you to talk about something right at this moment on this podcast that's going to get us all in a ton of trouble.
I can't do it, Scott. Sorry, Scott. I love those guys. And we were talking about this last night with the different. We're going to get into this on the show, obviously, but the difference between people that put money on the line on basketball for and the difference between internet gangsters who know not much about basketball. But yeah, no, the Shandling thing. So there's like a scene where he's playing in an actual Larry Sanders jersey, which is great. And then it goes deep into meditation. And what else is there? Shandling's just a kind of a funny weirdo.
Wasn't Gary Shandling in one of the Marvel movies recently?
He
did a cameo.
And there's some great stuff where like he really wanted to be an actor. And so we were talking about Jumanji. This is where this came up, The Rock. So The Rock, he showed a little range in Jumanji because he plays a nerdy kid. It's a body switch movie. And Shandling, when he got into acting, he wanted to find that range. And you have to really work at it to be a good actor. I mean, I'm not breaking much news here, but like you have to go to acting classes. You have to really kind of do a deep dive into yourself and see if you can start to live in that moment. That was actually the message behind the Shandling thing, is how to live in that moment. And he would get all nasty with people if they didn't live in that moment. There's some incredible scenes where like he's just reaming Ricky Gervais, who Gervais can't get in his own self, and he's just like trying to goof around in this scene that the two of them are doing. Shandling's just reaming him, and it was one of the most awkward and beautiful moments. A lot of that stuff, highly recommended. It will keep your interest.
All right.
And then Jumanji was just okay. It was just okay.
For those of you who don't know who Gary Shandling is, picture Paul Reiser and Billy Crystal having a weird child together.
Wait, okay. First of all, anybody who knows those two are going to know who Gary Shandling is.
Billy Crystal is more famous than Gary Shandling, I think, right? Because he hosted the Oscars.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? Gary Shandling hosted the Emmys, and this was
which is like the
part
Oscars.
Of part of the movie, part of the show. He hosted the Emmys and he killed it. Like I was not a fan of Shandling because, let's see, he started the Gary Shandling show as a part of that Fox network block of shows that included The Simpsons, and I think Cops. It would go Cops, more Cops, a couple more hours of Cops, and then it would be like The Simpsons, Married with Children, The Tracy Ullman Show, and then Gary Shandling Show, I think, was last. And it was too weird for me. I was too young.
Yeah, same. I'm in the same boat as you, and it sounds like a lot of the stuff he ended up doing was on HBO, which I didn't get until like 3 years ago.
It was the first show that was like, I think HBO prior to that time was all movies and not a lot of whatever kind of stuff we see now. And so when he did that on HBO, I never saw it. I never, that's when I was playing sports and didn't care about anything else. But that one apparently was really good. Larry Sanders.
By the way, if people are wondering what I'm looking at when I'm turning this way, I know that I mentioned last time that I had to shut everything down on my computer so that this video would run without buffering. So I've hooked up a laptop, and it's just wedged on this tiny little. It's actually my end table because everybody knows the bed's behind me. I had to move a bunch of pictures and like pens and pencils off of it, And so I do have a laptop over here, but I can't get my right arm across to type or I'll hit the microphone a bunch of times.
Hey,
beautiful.
In an update on your bed, Dan Besbris' unmade bed update.
How's Dan Besbris' unmade bed doing in that league?
If they went with Den Besbris, that would get them the ultimate cred.
The love den with Den Besbris.
It's Den Besbris.
Den.
First place, Den.
First place. Yes, outstanding. And my bed is as it should be, unmade. Directly behind me. All right, let's do a show. You ready?
All right, F it, why not?
Yeah, that is the hoop ball motto.
That is one of our many slogans around here.
We have a running tally of slogans. There's F it, let's go. There's get your ball hooped, and there's enough fantasy info to kill you, which may resurface come draft guide time 2018. All right, we're going live in 5, 4, 3. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the very last Fantasy NBA Today live edition. Don't worry, see how I switched the order of the words up there. It's the last live show of the 2017-2018 NBA campaign. I am Dan Besbris, your gracious host, and I'm joined, as always on Friday, by the suddenly shrouded in darkness, the great Aaron Bruski, who, I mean, what's going on up there? Is it, did you actually put some wood paneling over your window to decrease the light? Did you actually board the place up like you said you were gonna?
Yeah, I printed out all those tweets from last night and boarded up the place with
I can't wait to talk about that.
Everybody's tweets.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. We have a lot of fun things to talk about on today's show. We wanted to get a little bit weird since it is the last live show of the season. So we have a slightly different lineup for everybody. Number one, obviously, if you can follow us, if you can see us on YouTube, you can see our Twitter handles are listed right underneath our names, at Aaron Bruski, at Dan Besbris, and of course, at Hoopball Fantasy. Make sure to like the video on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, do all that fun stuff. Those of you that are watching right now, though, are probably folks that have been watching for most of the season. If you're stumbling onto us on the very last week, welcome. Maybe there's one of you. I don't know, but we're happy to have you. Anyway, the thing I was about to get into is normally on this show, we focus on key topics from the week just gone by. I make a list, which I did, by the way. I made the list anyway, of things that I want to bug Bruski about. But because it's silly season and because the things to talk about are fairly silly, Aaron and I thought we'd have a little bit of fun on today's show in a segment that I am affectionately referring to as Butthead Bracketology. I thought that was a clean way to get some alliteration involved. And then we'll take some questions, because I think there still will be a couple. It looks like a handful of folks have found their way to the chat room. The question that I didn't fully solve in my own head, Brew, is the order of doing stuff on this thing. I also kind of want to talk about the playoff chase. I know it's not a fantasy thing, but it does have fantasy implications, because those are the guys that'll keep playing down the stretch. You want to talk about playoffs first? Because the race out west is nuts.
I think you led me to the answer yes, Dan.
It's a fun one, right?
I don't want to go against you, so let's do the playoff first.
All right, let's do playoff first. The Western Conference playoff race is obviously the more interesting of the two. The East is basically written. The top 8 are in. The question is, where are they going to sit? So why don't we do the East first, since I think we can knock that one out in a little bit less time. The Raptors are sitting pretty in the 1 seed. The Celtics are sitting pretty in the 2 seed. And then it's a total mishmash the rest of the way down. The Cavs, Sixers, and the Pacers are all kind of jumbled in that 3 to 5 territory. Those 3 teams are separated by 2 games. The 6, 7, and 8 seeds, the Heat, the Wizards, and the Bucks, are separated by 1 game. And it seems like everybody's trying to find the Boston Celtics. Do you agree with that strategy for the bottom 3 teams?
I don't think they're actually doing that. I think that from a coaching perspective is something that you just can't tell your players to do. If you tell them to do that, they'll never listen to you ever again. It's so now the coaches, they might do things that we see in the creative tanking realm. They might play a rotation they haven't played all year. They might, pull a guy a little bit early. But even that stuff, like if you're a player and you come out at a certain time every game, and then all of a sudden you don't, or like, some role player plays that hasn't played in a while, or a hot hand gets pulled out of the game. I mean, players are really in tune with that kind of stuff. And what it signals to your team is like, you don't think we can beat Cleveland? You don't think we can beat Philly? You don't think that we can beat Toronto? You want us targeting the Celtics? Okay, you don't have any belief in us. So I don't buy that stuff until you get to the teams that have, just an extraordinary amount of veterans, and they don't need, they could get everybody on the same page, and they don't need that kind of intangible mindset set for them by their coach. So we have seen it in the past, but I just don't. I mean, maybe the Heat would fit that criteria. Washington's still trying to find themselves, and then Milwaukee, I mean, they're the only team in the playoffs right now with a negative point differential. They got a lame duck coach, and they're not really meeting expectations. So I think all of 6 through 8 are trying to push right now.
The Wizards, to me, are a team I wanted to highlight more on the betting side than anything else in the return of the injured star, which is the other half of the injured star theory. Those that like the betting things we talk about on these programs, the Wizards are falling right into a prototypical bucket, which is when a superstar goes down, you often see the other guys play better, largely because they are playing harder. These guys are not going 100% for 82 games, or they will die. So John Wall goes down. The rest of the Wizards sort of free themselves up to have a little fun. They win some games. John Wall comes back, and everybody lets their guard down. The Wizards have lost 3 games in a row. They gave up a big lead against the Cavaliers yesterday. Are you at all worried that the Wiz won't be able to get this thing sorted out before the playoffs begin?
Yeah, I'm not optimistic about their chance of keeping that together in general there in Washington. I think that they, with John Wall, he is going to test whether he is going to live up to that contract. There's knee issues, but there's really, like, if you're going to make that much money, you have to have kind of the complete thing going for you. And it seems like the areas that he's lacking are obviously, a deep 3-point shot. He doesn't really have that. And everything else is kind of in the right place. But it's the leadership. It's the off the court stuff. It's, are people trying to follow John Wall into, to use a bad metaphor, war, so to speak. And you just don't get that sense. And you have a lot of players that are, getting paid a lot of money there. And if the 7th seed, and we can give him a little bit of slack for John Wall being out, but if the 7th seed or the 4th seed, or you're never going to make it to the finals, the Eastern Conference Finals, then the team's got to really ask some questions like, why are we investing in this group at this rate, at this cost, and where do we go from here? How do we shake this up? Washington's not an incredible free agency destination. I don't think there's a lot of faith in that franchise around the league. So it's going to be kind of, to me, I think they're just going to fizzle out. And sometimes when the writing's on the wall, players start to check out. They start to give up. They don't trust each other. I don't see any sort of like first round upset in their future, even if they play the Celtics.
All right, let's go West. The West is crazy, aside from the top 2.
By the way, I'm not that down on the Celtics. I think they're going to play tough.
Yeah, but, I mean, any shot at getting past, like, the second round with Kyrie out?
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't bet. I would take Philly against them. We could talk LeBron at some point in Cleveland. And Toronto, man, they're my favorite, but if they have a mental thing. You just can't gauge a mental thing. Like, have they gotten over it? I mean, they just lost to Cleveland twice in a row now. So I don't know. I'm going to take Toronto as my favorite, I think. I got a couple more days to fill out my bracket. But, yeah, no. I'm not down on Boston. I think Boston's going to play everybody tough all the way through till the end whenever they lose.
I think Toronto would love it if somebody else could somehow take care of the Cavs for them. That's a matchup where one team just has the other's number. And like you said, it's a mental thing. Western Conference, you got 3 through 10, still sort of all in this weird mishmash, although the Clippers find themselves in an unenviable spot right now. They are 2 games back of the Nuggets and the Wolves, and 2.5 games back of the New Orleans Pelicans if they were going to try to sneak in along with another team, potentially. The Blazers had to play without Damian Lillard, and so they did not win yesterday. The Jazz are rolling, as they pretty much have been anytime they've had Rudy Gobert in the lineup. The Spurs lost a couple games in Los Angeles, which has put kind of a dent into what felt like a relatively safe spot for them. And then the Thunder are like a coin flip every night, whether or not it's going to be good Thunder or bad Thunder. I think that the easy question for me to ask right now, Brew, is which of these teams actually end up in the playoffs. But let's go beyond that a little bit and say, you got the Nuggets, the Wolves, the Pels, the Clippers down at the bottom there. Sure, there's going to be a battle, but can any of those teams do something once they get in? It seems like they're using all of their strength and energy just to get to this point.
I've had that concern. So, yeah, I think that's an issue. I think, though, that, for a lot of these teams, they didn't really expect to go beyond the first round. You look at, like, Minnesota would be just happy to be there. Denver would just be happy to be there. New Orleans would just be happy to be there. Then I think you start to see a little bit more expectations beyond that. So as they tune up for their season, you've got, you're targeting an extra 2 weeks, if you're one of those teams. So mentally, I don't know that they are completely out of gas just yet. I think that they're pacing themselves to get there. But yeah, it's a mess, man. Like, if you're San Antonio, you could legitimately fall out of this thing. The Clippers, I think, are out. So it's really just like a 9-team, or not a 9-team race. There's 9 teams vying for 8 spots. I wouldn't worry about San Antonio in terms of running out of gas. I think the Thunder are in a good spot. I would worry about the Pelicans. They are down players. And the Wolves. The Wolves have been through a mental struggle, and I think they're the most interesting story right now out of all of those teams if they actually fall out of this thing. And then Denver, yeah, they've been winning a lot lately. Yeah, they've been pushing hard. And the local narrative and the Twitter narrative is way louder than the narrative kind of nationally or in that locker room. I don't think they're feeling quite as much pressure as it might seem by the tweets. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see who advances. And, man, you got to like some of them. Like if you can get a shot with the Blazers, I think that's good. I probably wouldn't want to play the Jazz, but it's not like the Jazz are impenetrable. So the West is just really interesting this year. Obviously, you don't want to play 1 and 2, but with everybody so bunched up, you could, possibly land yourself a 6th seed.
All right, let me ask you a couple of fantasy questions, and then we're going to break down a bracket. I got the bracket ready to go in front of me. The fantasy questions I will keep on the somewhat brief side. I created a decent list here. Just in case, but I'm not going to go through all of them. First thing on the list is Nico Mirotic shaved his face. I had to bring that up, which I made a joke on Twitter. Everybody was talking about how he shaved his face, and somebody brought it to my attention, and I said, I know, man, I watch him through his bathroom window. And that didn't get me into any trouble, which I thought was a sign that I still am.
Well, you're not even kidding. That's the crazy part.
I know. I was like, why doesn't anybody care? I've got these binoculars hanging from my wall over here. I've got pictures of Nico in the development booth next door. Nobody cares.
You're remaking 1 hour photo with Robin Williams.
That's right. Oh, that movie was depressing. So Nico, obviously, everybody's going to say he shaved his face and then he had a solid ball game. It just seems like a guy that is dealing with some inconsistencies here in a crowded Western Conference. I don't know. Is there anything more to read into that than just a guy that's sort of kind of finding himself with this team?
I don't know the exact amount of days off, but it felt like they had some time off, and that really helped him out. I'm scrolling to find the amount of days off they had. Yeah, Sunday to Wednesday. So he had Monday and Tuesday off to get his legs back. He's been struggling due to injury. I think that's pretty clear. And so with them needing to win games and really being a team that kind of could fall out of this thing, they're pushing. So they're going to push him. And I think he's a guy that you should have in lineups. I mean, he showed it to you yesterday, or pardon me, on Wednesday. So you just got to roll with it. I was rolling with him the entire time he was struggling. I mean, you can't. He could pop off for 5 defensive stats really quick, just with the way that team generates defensive stats and the way he plays within that construct. So you cannot not play that guy.
All right, here's a few names of guys that have popped up in sort of the classic who are these weirdos that surfaced in the last week of the season. Sean Kilpatrick is back again, although it didn't look like he was going to be because he had 2 points through 3 quarters, and then he scored 19 in the fourth of Chicago's last game. It sounds like the Bulls are playing most of their guys tonight, but if I'm not mistaken, this is part of a back-to-back, so you got to think that there's going to be some kind of opening. Is the opening big enough for Sean Kilpatrick to do something the rest of the way?
No, I don't. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I think that the Clippers, if they're not mathematically out of it, they're close. They're gonna take a big, deep breath and exhale when that happens. They're looking at a coaching change, in my opinion. I think Doc Rivers is out. Saw a rumor today that Stan Van Gundy could be in. So what happens when that happens is it's like school is ending and, it's the last week of school and everybody's like, oh man, screw it. Let the kids play. And so, yeah, I think that could, I think that could pan out.
Marshawn Brooks is another name on the docket here. He's been doing significant stuff in Memphis. He missed 1 game in there, but if I'm not, I think I saw that Memphis is resting like 9 guys tonight or something ridiculous like that. I actually do have some faith in Marshawn Brooks, and he just signed a 2-year deal. Any thoughts on him the last week?
Yeah, I mean, if he can actually stay on the floor, I think that he's a stat getter, and you're looking at a Memphis squad that's tanking, and I think that's like the garden variety definition of a player that would do well in this time frame. And this is why the silly season sucks, Dan, is it's like, talking about Marshawn Brooks. It's like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Absolutely, you can give him a look, but I mean, is he a must-start player? Nah.
All right, I'm going to ask you one more guy because he's sort of back in a different time. He was kind of a guy that you liked. Kyle O'Quinn, decent numbers in New York with Enes Kanter on the shelf.
Yeah, he's been good, man. And I got this league that I'm basically doing a blocks run on, and I think he had 4 or 5 the other day, real early too. And yeah, he's going to be great. And I don't think Kanter wants to play, for the rest of the season. That's just my guess there. And that means Kyle Quinn's going to get his 20 minutes, and who knows, maybe they play him more. But yeah, he's got garbage time, silly season sleeper written all over him.
All right, let's do a little butthead bracketology here. I know this is what you're excited about. I was texting with Brew last night about this little idea where we're gonna analyze a few things that I don't think. I mean, Brew probably knew they existed more than I did because I'm a bit more of a noob to the being on this side of the wall in fantasy stuff. But I've assembled a list of 8 buttheads or types of buttheads, and I've created a bracket. And so you can argue with me on seeding if you like, or you can just tell me who's going to end up going to the finals and what the matchup's going to be. We have the Twitter division, and we have the ESPN division. Which would you like to start with?
I don't know, man. Let's maybe ESPN. So basically, the ESPN division, as I understand it, is the types of player Twitters that are out there.
Yes, that's correct.
The reason why that we've done this is that these people get their basketball takes from ESPN, or like Stephen A. Smith and previously Skip Bayless, or where do they get their basketball takes from? We don't know.
We don't know, but there's like a weird undying love for certain players, or there's an undying hatred for others. And this idea that we're talking about now, and we're going to get into it in just a moment, surfaced basically because I was watching your Twitter timeline yesterday, and you were
still
just
going today. By the way,
you were just getting hammered by D'Angelo
I wasn't getting
Russell.
hammered by nobody, Dan.
I just mean they were coming after you. They were literally they were
like zombies.
Yes, the zombie apocalypse, the D'Angelo Russell zombie apocalypse was coming for Aaron Bruski, and I just sat back in my chair and I was like, "This is fascinating. This is absolutely fascinating."
It wasn't just to me there's two caliber of twitterers.
That's fine. We're old people. They know.
There's the people that belong in that bracket, and then there's actual people that are in the basketball world. And D'Angelo Russell was such a lightning rod topic in such a big city, and my take got called out by one writer that I respect, and I don't think it probably came across as him completely coming at me, but I know where he stands on D'Angelo Russell. We've had it out, and so it's not even just like these people that don't know anything about anything. There are people that are legitimate basketball analysts that believe in D'Angelo Russell, that think that it's too early to put any sort of analysis onto him. So it makes for fascinating stuff because there is just a ton of D'Angelo Russell people out there in general, and when I watch the guy play, I'm just like in awe of how bad he is. Like it's like,
well, this is what got you into trouble yesterday.
Well, it's not like I can't recognize that he has talent. I mean, last year I even thought that this was the year that he should be able to pull it together and start to be a better basketball player. But whether it's the injuries, but it's more than just the injuries with him. It's his understanding of the game of basketball is very low. Like, he doesn't understand how to play. And he's gotten by all of those years in college and prior to that, taking a variety of hilariously bad shots and not playing a lick of defense. And so when I watch this, I see a Brooklyn team that made a big bet on him, and then they're kind of forced to play that thing out. So you have a point guard in Spencer Dinwiddie who really thinks the game through, and him and Kenny Atkinson have these high level conversations about what should I do here? I want to do this there, and he's thinking 3 levels deep. Like, okay, if we get this switch here and this rotation here, I'll be driving to the rim against a shorter defender, and I can get that shot. And with Russell, it's just like, yeah, he's not going to do anything that requires any thinking. He's not going to, it's basically like, I think I can go right or left, and I'll just figure it out when I get there. And it's terrible. And that's just the offensive side of the ball. In defense, he can't keep track of what's going on.
So Brew put that roughly into 140 characters yesterday, and it started an avalanche. And so in that vein, I thought, wow, this is, like I mentioned a moment ago, this was fascinating to me that there were so many people out there that just immediately wanted to tear you to pieces for saying anything negative about D'Angelo Russell. There was a gentleman who was talking about how, what a surprise, someone from California who hates D'Angelo Russell. And I thought to myself, what does that even mean? I didn't want to take sides in anything that was going on. Everybody knows that I think D'Angelo Russell is not going to pan out. I don't think it's going to be a thing. But, I wasn't talking about it on Twitter yesterday. But I did reply in that particular thread because I thought, what does this guy really mean? I was like, Bruski lives in Sacramento. He has no connection to the Lakers. He's not a fan of any team. He's just watching a guy play basketball and thinking, this guy sucks. What does California have to do with it? Do you think that Sacramento is like next to Los Angeles? They're like 400 miles apart, right, guy?
I don't know the connection. This is where like kind of like stupid Twitter emerges. And
what does the term stands mean? What does that actually stand?
Oh, stands, but you're like a fan.
Oh, okay. So that's what the ESPN bracket is. It's the stands or the anti-stands of these players. So this is how I have them seated, Brew. I have the Derrick Rose stands as the number 1 seed in the ESPN bracket. Because,
no quibbles there.
Okay. D'Angelo, I put number 2.
Okay.
I have the anti-Isaiah Thomas stands as the 3 seed, and the 2014 to 2016 Rajon Rondo stands as the 4 seed. They kind of slipped in because I wasn't really sure who that obvious 4th choice was, of someone that's so polarizing. Because the top 3 in this bracket, Rose, D'Angelo, and IT, are some of the most polarizing names that I think I can ever remember, of guys that, like, at this exact moment aren't making much of a difference on the basketball court.
Man, I think this is the most tightly bunched bracket, of all time, because
we need a play-in game.
That 4 seed, I mean, Rondo, he, by virtue of, I guess if you win a championship, you get so much intangible credit from the media. Like, you can get away with so much. Like, Kevin Durant right now is basically calling all the media idiots, and he's just saying all sorts of stupid stuff at the same time. And it's Kevin Durant, and he's, an NBA champion. So he's getting away with it. Can you imagine if Isaiah Thomas said any of that stuff right now? The media would completely turn on him. And so with Rondo for, 3 years there, even after the Dallas thing, it was just this constant, just echo chamber barrage of Rondo's this smart player and Rondo's doing well and look at these assists. And if you watch the game at all, if you're a student of the game, if you put money down on the game, if whatever, you're not just like a casual media person, which frankly, if you're not deep into those details, you're kind of a casual watcher of the game in media. These guys would just praise this guy, and it literally led to Rondo getting full run of the Sacramento Kings for an entire year while he played terribly. And because of a narrative, that entire team went to crap. Probably not just in part to due to that, because they had all sorts of other issues, but like that was one thing that just completely made them untenable. So like, I think as a 4 seed, that might have more, or as in a seeding perspective, that might have more weight than some stupid D'Angelo Russell conversation. Or, even Isaiah Thomas. It's like, it's not really impacting, I guess, anything on the court. The stuff that we've heard in this most recent year about Isaiah Thomas. It's close. Either way, it's close. Except for I think Rose at 1 is solid. All
right, so the Rose-Rondo battle. Rondo, that's a tough draw in round 1.
Well, the Derrick Rose stuff is like, I mean, I haven't dealt with it this year, but I've seen other people deal with it. You say something bad about Derrick Rose, and like, I don't know who these people are, but they just come out of the woodwork.
The woodwork, man. It was nuts. I said something yesterday about how I felt like it was insane that Derrick Rose was taking leaning jump shots in the key when Karl Anthony Towns was actually in the ball game, and somebody jumped down my throat for it. Like, how can you argue that Derrick Rose taking almost any shot other than an uncontested layup is better than whatever Cat does with the ball on offense? Karl Anthony Towns is a transcendent offensive talent whose efficiency is through the roof, and they got Rose taking these absurd leaners.
What's weird about it is it feels like he's kind of calmed down a little bit in Minnesota, but he's still like so bad, and he's been bad for years now, and he's not somebody you would want on your team. So I don't understand where these people are coming from. They still think he's, and mind you, most people I think that we deal with don't think this. So this is just this section of Twitter that just comes out of the woodwork. They think he's Chicago Derrick Rose.
Yeah, and he was good at one time in his life. He really was.
Yeah, it's a strange segment of the population. And as far as the Rondo people go, 1 versus 4, I'd say there's still people right now that think that Rondo is good. So I guess if I'm going to take a pick here in who should advance. And by the way, what's the criteria for advancing?
That's something that we probably should have talked about before starting the podcast. I don't know. Well, I think it's got to be the more ferocious of the Twitter bases, right? I think I got to go D Rose in this one. The Twitter base there is just way more insane. Maybe insanity level, or more irritating?
More ridiculous?
Yeah, okay. Most ridiculous advances. Is the Rose stands Rose Twitter people or Rondo Twitter people? Who's more ridiculous?
I think it's the Rose Twitter people because, the Rondo people have kind of died down. I don't think Rondo, 2 years from now, there probably won't be Rondo people still saying that Rondo should be added to the team and, give him the car keys and go. Whereas with the Rose people, they've been out there saying that stuff as recently as this year.
As yesterday.
As yesterday. So I'm going to take Derrick Rose to advance.
Okay, that's the easy one. I think that's the only part of this bracket that I actually consider to be a relatively easy decision. Rondo is eliminated. I'm marking it on my sheet. The 2-3 battle here of the IT antis and the D'Angelo backers. Who's more ridiculous? This is a good one. How do you pick?
So for the IT folks, that one's more sinister than anything. I think it's sinister because we know why certain storylines have been put out there. And it was all back to Sacramento, and those things carried through to his Phoenix days. And because nobody cares about Sacramento or Phoenix, your casual NBA writer just listens to these headliners, these aggregators, that the good old Pete D'Alessandro would get into contact with and then lay down these things that were just kind of laughable, and everybody bought it. And this number 60 pick, who's this great story, should have had a better contract than he had in Phoenix. And this is the kind of the sad part about how this has all gone for him, is he took a bad contract in Phoenix that he shouldn't have taken, and he he jumped early at the money, and he's kind of gotten the raw end of the deal at every juncture. And it's not looking great for this upcoming free agency either. But then he goes to Boston, and he goes to a legitimate organization where, good coach knows how to play him, and he does very well, and really should have become this really good story. And he just made, I think, honestly, if he just didn't say the Brinks truck comment, I think he probably keeps a lot more people on his side. But there's this thing, people don't want you to be more than what they think you should be. If you go and you say, no, I'm better than that, they all of a sudden have a problem with that. And we want our athletes to give us good quotes and to be honest. And, in certain cases, we want them to have confidence and bravado. But in this particular case, there was so much talk about, being a bad teammate coming out of Sacramento, which was bunk, and it carried over. It's those people that had that narrative, they wanted to keep that narrative in place any way they could. So they would talk about any flaw that he had during his Boston run, which was just spectacular. And then when they got this opportunity in Cleveland, they all came out of the woodworks. Isaiah, unprepared for the media scrutiny that was going to come with playing with LeBron James, it just steamrolled like nothing I've really seen. And that's a sinister situation. The D'Angelo Russell situation, to me, is just kind of a simple sort of get off the bandwagon now while you can, people. I had a guy that tweeted me just last night or early today. He said, hey, I was the guy who told you I believed in D'Lo and tweeted you. And I told him, this is what I do with everybody. I say, well, just tweet me in a couple years. No big deal. If you're right, I'll tip my cap to you. You won't be. But, tweet me in a couple years when this thing's over. And he says, I no longer see it in him, and you were right. And he will never be the player I thought he would be. I respect that guy. But this is, to me, a very simple situation where you just have people that aren't willing to get off the hype train. But it's a big market in Los Angeles where he came from. It's a big name player coming out of college. He ran around with Nick Young. He got, in trouble for outing Nick Young. He got in trouble or he had the good commercial with throwing his cell phone into the ocean. That was good. He carries himself like a wannabe. He was big in the LA entertainment scene. Wasn't he dating Kylie Jenner or something? When she was 18 or something. He was 19.
There are 85 Jenners out there. I can't keep track of this stuff.
So it's a juicier story.
All right,
is the point.
Who's the pick? Is it the Russell? Does the Russell Twitter base advance for being more ridiculous than the IT anti-Twitter base? Because one, as you said, is more sinister and one is a little more insane.
I so want to have D'Angelo Russell advance here because I'm just tired of talking about Isaiah Thomas. But it's Isaiah Thomas. It's too ridiculous.
The upset.
It's too ridiculous. It's too sinister. It's, there's luckily there's a good portion of the NBA media that's kind of like, why is everybody killing this guy? And I think they've sort of stepped up and, kept the bleeding to a minimum. He's going to get into free agency after this hip thing. And we'll see how he progresses, what kind of a deal he takes and what kind of a market there is. I know this when he was coming out of Sacramento and Phoenix and, not in Boston, but it's the whole time he's been this money ball player. If you can get this guy on a small deal, you can really build your team right because he can run your offense. I mean, you can just spot up shooters and then surround him with defensive players, and then you are onto something as a basketball team. So, and he's going to come ridiculously cheap this year.
I think people are going to be mad at you for not even letting D'Angelo Russell advance in this ridiculous bracket challenge.
I'm sure. All right, you know what? Hey, you convinced me, Dan. D'Angelo Russell.
Oh, you're switching it up. All right, we'll go Russell. Switching it up. All right, IT eliminated in round 1. D'Angelo advances. All right, between Rose and Russell, who's going to the finals of this thing?
Let's do Russell just because it's more topical. I think with Rose, we know what that is.
Okay.
D'Angelo Russell it's spicy, man. He went for like 22 and 6 or something last night, and his backers like sent me a thing like he made the right pass at the end of the game to Alan Crabb. What are you, some idiot? And I looked at the play and like he dribbled the shot clock down to nothing and couldn't beat Jabari Parker off the dribble. Jabari Parker, people, like he couldn't beat him off the dribble. And then, of course, because he doesn't want to take a bad shot because that would look bad, he's like, oh, no, you shoot it, Alan Crabb. And, of course, Crabb just like, okay, I've got 0 time to actually release the ball here. I will catch and shoot. And a lot of times when players aren't thinking, they make their shot. So he made the shot, and that's the kind of analysis that's out there for D'Angelo Russell. So I'm going to give him the upset over Derrick Rose.
Wow. Russell to the finals from the ESPN division. All right, let's move over to the other half of this bracket. This is officially called the Twitter division, but it's really angled at the entire basketball community. Bruski, this
why are we doing this?
We're doing this one because it's silly. So hopefully people don't take it too seriously. I have the number 1 seed on the basketball community, what I call brown nose Twitter, where all you see are retweets and discussions about how awesome the original take was, where such a person brings nothing new to the table. Do you agree with that being a 1 seed?
I don't think there's a way I could disagree with that being a 1 seed.
Yeah.
It is so detestable.
These are the people that fill your timeline with the exact same tweet you've already seen from 10 minutes earlier. All you want to do is see new and interesting information, and instead your timeline is populated with the same one, sometimes not even that interesting tweet of people that are trying to get noticed by someone with more followers than them. The 4 seed, which is the battle in this. I mean, honestly, like,
it just sounds funny when you say it because, like, I don't think people have really had this conversation, but it's so precious, it's so prevalent out there. To hear you say that, it's so funny. I don't know. I'm just kind of laughing.
And we're not talking about casual fans. If you see a tweet you like, retweet that joint because that's how stuff gets spread in the community. We're talking about people that just want to get noticed by somebody that they think
for the purposes of advancing their either career or their Twitter presence.
Right, precisely. So that's brown nose Twitter. I've called them the BNG, the brown nose gang, at times during our conversations. The 4 seed in this one are people that are already exorbitantly wealthy that ask for money on Twitter. That drives me insane.
So you took it to the level of they have money, so that makes it even worse.
You're right, exactly. I have no problem with people that need some funding, right? Like we sell stuff at Hoopball. That's fine. Our good buddies at the ITL, this got me in trouble before when I phrased it improperly. They've got their Patreon thing going on, which is great because most of their stuff is completely free, and that's a way for them to sort of subsist and keep ITL alive. The ones that drive me nuts, and maybe you disagree with me on this one, I don't know, are the ones where it's like, here's our 900,000 listener base and our multi-million-dollar advertising deal. But if you want more, all you got to do is give me $85 and I'll, deliver a banana to your door in my underpants or something like that.
I think I can find the underpinning of the argument here, because I will take the opposing side on the philosophy of, like, if, say, somebody's rich, that they cannot go out and charge what the market would bear for whatever, right?
Yeah, please disagree with me. This is good. That's better radio anyway.
Yeah, well, and where I think it gets ridiculous is, like, what are you offering for that value? Like, what? So if you're going to charge people X amount of money for whatever, like, is it really delivering?
So that's
there's just some people out there they don't.
Yeah, and that to me is
their
why
analysis is kind of shrouded in this mystique of what their byline might be, what their affiliations are, what their how they manage their Twitter careers.
Okay.
And then they just, it's like they've never played the game, or they don't see the game in a way that I think when I talk with the sports betting community, like, they never miss. They just, it's like all these things are they're commodities. They're not question marks. There's no bad analysis really out there. I mean, people might get their picks wrong, but we're not stuck on what the definition of the word is. And so I see those guys out there charging, and I just feel like that might be where it gets a little unsavory. And if you want to throw in the angle, like, you've got traction, why do you need to pilfer an additional X amount of money out of your listeners? I don't know if I'd go to the yard for that.
Okay, that's fine. Well, listen, I had a play-in idea here where that one barely made the cut. The other one that I had as sort of like teetering right on the outside looking in was idea theft Twitter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Sleeper pick.
So do you think that one defeats asks for money to put in Scrooge McDuck's money bin Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, well, here's another thing about the old 4-seed or the 4-seed. I'm already telegraphing what my picks are here.
I think you've got the other one coming in. I'm going to start crossing things out over here.
The industry needs money. Like, premium revenue is the future, and it's also going to be what gets us out of the said problem that we're dealing with here on this really important show.
Okay, so I went too specific is what happened there. I narrowed it down too much, and it's just not interesting anymore. So I'm going to put idea theft Twitter in. They win the play-in game, and they're now the 4-seed.
Wow.
Right? That's fair.
Just an enormous news. Idea theft Twitter is...
I think we can all agree that
combine idea theft Twitter with climb the ladder Twitter?
Is that, well,
it's kind of a variation of it.
I feel like
you're sort of stealing something that you need, and then when you're done with it, you don't know how to reciprocate, or you just kind of try to get up to that next rung.
Okay, so here's what ends up happening if we do combine those, because that was basically my 2-seed anyway. So
let's not combine them.
No, I'm going to combine them, and I'm going to leave the 4-seed the way it was, but it's just going to get walloped by the BNG, right? The 1-seed just destroyed them.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
So that's a good way to get rid of the one you didn't like anyway. All right, so the 2-3-seed matchup is now idea theft Twitter is combined with, I referred to it basically the way you did in a text at one point as gets takes from Brown Nose Gang Twitter.
Oh, wait, so that's 2? Who's 3?
Big League Twitter. If you think you're too cool to deal with anybody that's not as cool as you on Twitter.
Well, see, I think Big League Twitter would pair well with Climb the Ladder Twitter.
Okay, so we'll make those the 3-seed. And 2 is gets takes from the Brown Nose Gang Twitter. That's a hell of a matchup. I don't even know where to go. It could be anybody.
Idea theft Twitter fall in? Because idea theft is a very specific thing.
I had too many things. We had to. I mean, one of them's got to go at the play-in game. I'll
just say this about idea theft Twitter: like, if you hear on a show like this in the fantasy world, like that this is a sleeper, right? And then all of a sudden you change your analysis and you don't give a hat tip to that person or entity that had that idea prior to that. That's idea theft.
Yeah, this one, like,
and we've been warned by some good listeners of the show. They will send us things,
and we have some very good friends.
Clear idea theft, and it's a pattern, and we'll leave the names nameless.
Yeah. I don't want to call anybody out on this show. We're having some fun here. We're just pointing out things that grind our gears a little bit.
But it could have been a 5 seed, the idea theft Twitter, if we threw it out there on its own. But I think it's out. Let's go 2 versus 3.
I may have needed to create like a 6 seed on this side, where the 1 and 2 seeds get a first round bye, like most of your fantasy leagues probably do. But it's too late. We're in too deep. Idea theft Twitter is out.
Reset the 2 versus 3 matchup for me.
2 is get takes from the Brown Nose Gang Twitter, and 3 is Big Leagues Others Twitter.
Big Leagues Others Twitter. So the Hop the Ladder Twitter is part of that group, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, because those ones really grind my gears.
I think I know which direction you're going on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna. I think the committee here did a poor job of seeding.
Yeah, I biffed the seeding on this side. I'll wear that one.
I think because let's just talk quickly about the big leagues. Or pardon me, the gets opinions from the Brown Nose Twitter.
Yeah, clown on somebody, then we'll move on.
Those guys, they're not the 2 seed, and here's why: because this is Twitter in a nutshell. You have maybe 10 to 20 influencers out there that are at big organizations, have a large Twitter following, whatever that might be, and then they say something about a player. In this case, previously it was Zach Lowe, and Zach Lowe's not a part of Brown Nose Twitter. He's well above needing any of that noise. But so like he has an article and he writes about Spencer Dinwiddie. I guarantee you, all of a sudden now everybody thinks Spencer Dinwiddie is good, and so if you get your takes from other people, and so the only people in this industry that are really truly comfortable, it's like a small group of like 10, 20, 30, writers that have big bylines, have big deals, might even have representation, and they're safe. They don't care what people think. They're doing their thing, basically playing the long game, so they won't get out of their lane very much. But they're comfortable, so they don't need to do any of the BS that you see the rest of Twitter doing, which we'll be talking about with the 3 seed. 2 seed, these people just, again, Zach Lowe says it, Spencer Dinwiddie is now a good player, or Writer X says it, and all of a sudden that guy's a locker room cancer, or whatever the example is. And to me, it just makes the Twitter experience so like predictable and common, I guess, almost high school like. Is like we're not even really having a discussion anymore, because people just get their thoughts from other people, and we're just talking about 20 to 30 people's thoughts on something, and that just gets boring. And it's tough when you're a specialist in this field. Fantasy people, and I've said this for 5 years, 10 years, like fantasy people I would take into war with me on any basketball issue, because they are obsessing over it. They're making multiple posts per day in our forums. They're doing the hard work and the research. They're in it. A media guy has so many responsibilities, and I know this from my time in journalism, media, etc. It's like to be able to write a story, post a story, run it through whatever filters of layers of review it needs to go through, going to the arena, just driving to the arena, getting into the arena, getting into your seat, talking with people at the arena. All that time is just lost. Like, you're not getting better at understanding the game. So fantasy people, betting people, when we do this and we're just obsessing, we spend hours, days, weeks, months going through this stuff. It's really hard to listen to somebody say that's like D'Angelo Russell's good. because he's not, or whatever the example might be.
I think I know why we have Russell in the finals.
It's recency bias.
Yeah,
this has just happened yesterday.
That
so,
is a good one. All right, so Gets Takes is out.
The 3 seed, though, again, an element of sinisterness. I think, like, the people that constantly use retweets and mentions and likes to climb the ladder, like, if you can offer them X, Y, or Z, like those people, I feel like it's not sinister, but it's like, when did that become cool?
It's disingenuous is what it is.
That's the word. Yeah. It's disingenuous because, like, prior to Twitter, prior to social media, in this world that people do not remember, longer than 10 years ago, like, you still just sort of like interacted like normal people.
Yeah, but
like,
you know what?
Run around like shouting like, John Smith's the coolest guy in the world. He's like the best friend on campus. You gotta talk to John Smith, and like to try to become friends with John Smith or to become a part of John Smith's group.
You know why I have beef with this one, and why I think I'd probably have them advancing too, is it reminds me an awful lot of the sports broadcasting community, because at various events where a lot of us got together, one of the things that I always looked for in potential friends or allies was, will this person say something negative about anything, and will they look at me while I'm talking to them? And if you could hit both of those criteria, I was like, this dude's my favorite. But in general, they're looking over your shoulder to see who the cool guy is behind you, if they can jump to that guy instead. And everything is a learning experience. Like, you could be dragged through the coals right here in my bedroom, obviously on the brinks of hell. You see this red illumination in the background. You could be dragged through a hell, and most you could get a broadcaster ever say about it was a great learning experience, and I feel like I grew from it, because it's just BS, and it's what's the next best thing. So maybe I could have called it next best thing Twitter also, but that obviously is our advance.
Well, that's the other prong of this. That's the hop the ladder thing.
Yeah,
and
that drives me crazy.
There's people and entities and such that, I threw my weight behind in the past. And it's interesting, like, you start a brand, nobody knows who your brand is on day one. We're in year 2.5 right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people know what hoopball is. And still, it's not ESPN. It's not Sports Illustrated. It's not NBC, where I used to be. And what's so interesting is I've been tweeting the same terrible BS for 8 to 10 years, however long Twitter's been around, and I myself am terrible on Twitter so often, and I recognize that, and it's all part of the growth process and what we do here. I try not to be disingenuous, and I think that's one of the things I get in trouble with a lot, is I'm just not going to kiss your ass to be your friend or your business associate or whatever. I don't have to do that.
As evidenced by this podcast, we're not doing a whole lot of ass kissing. We're mostly just slapping people around today. But again, I mean, listen, we're not calling anybody out. This is just like things we've noticed over the last year that have driven us nuts, and we've talked about a little bit behind the scenes.
And let me quickly finish that. Is like, so there are people that, like, I've endorsed their show, right? Or I've said, hey, this person's really doing a great job. You should read their stuff. And there are a decent amount of people there that literally do not, they were really, thank you so much. Coming from you, this is a great honor. And now, no real difference in the level of terribleness of my Twitter discourse or the analysis that I put out there or whatever have you. If anything, I feel like I'm growing and improving and becoming a little less of an asshole on Twitter than I was before. And now it's just like, I can't help them, they think. So that would then mean, we just keep you at arm's distance. We don't tweet at you. We don't talk with you. We don't not viciously, but we don't retweet every little tweet. It's like, I like basketball, retweet, 50 retweets. I don't retweet that stuff anymore for you. But you see them retweeting other people's stuff. So there's a clear agenda there that they want to climb the ladder through retweets. And I think why this one advances is because we all live on Twitter. like it would be great. Like, I think if people were making money in a more not transparent way, in a more sane way, if the jobs weren't just disappearing, it's like, oh, I started work here at this newspaper. Oh, this newspaper's closed. Like, if people weren't so desperate, to try to make something, I think maybe the competition in the industry wasn't as great. Twitter probably becomes a place like it was in, I think, the second and third years of Twitter, where people were really exploring what you could do with the platform. Now, it's like we've all been stuck in the same room for 10 years with no ability to get out of it. And it's like cabin fever. Everybody's sick of each other. Innovation is just not there. And we're, because when Sherwood Strauss tweeted this the other day, and he basically said, I've actually reverted back to not being on Twitter as much and just going directly to websites to try to avoid the experience of social media. We can't do that. We have to know what everybody says at every point in time. So I don't think we'll ever get out of that. But that made me think, like, and I've thought this for a while, is what's the tipping point here of people just being so sick of Twitter and having their kind of brains rotted a little bit. It's a virtual world, and it sort of impacts the way that you interact with all these different people that you work with. And it would be nice if we got this kiss ass stuff out of the equation, because my ending point on that is we would never do that so transparently. There's kiss asses in the real world, but you just wouldn't be so blatantly obvious about it.
You got to be a little bit more. You got to be a little bit more subtle in the real world. That was an art back in the day. There's no
right.
It's not. Back in my day, we had to kiss ass and we had to make people think we were just nice about it. All right, so I think we've gone over.
We got 3 versus 1.
We got the 3 and the 1 on this side. It's Brown Nose Twitter and it's Climb the Ladder Twitter, which ended up kind of converging a little bit. Yeah.
Why don't we merge the two and have them advance?
All right, that's it. Versus D'Angelo Russell in the finals. Who's taking home the Butthead Bracketology Trophy for 2018?
Brown Nose Twitter.
Brown Nose Twitter takes the trophy. I'm going to draw a lovely little...
You know why? Because it's got staying power. I think Derrick Rose Twitter dies out at least in 15 years.
All right, there you go. I'm going to draw a trophy here on this thing. It's going to have a plaque. It's going to say, Dan and Aaron lost their jobs because of this. Let's take some questions from the chat room.
No, you're not gonna lose your job for this, Dan.
No, we're okay. We didn't call anybody out, and that was really
we did good.
Yeah, I think we were wonderful. We had a little fun with it. There were some things that drive us nuts.
And I poked fun at myself.
That's right. Well, we did call out some fan bases, but I think we're less concerned about that than anything.
No, they deserve it.
Let's take some questions. We'll try to lightning round this stuff as best we can.
Are people here still?
Yeah, dude, people love this stuff. This is good.
They do. Whenever I see somebody tweet like they're gonna go in on Twitter, I'm like all there for it.
Mm-hmm. So we had a little bit of fun today. Hopefully, people enjoyed that. Perhaps 2019 will bring us to our second annual Butthead Bracketology. Aaron and I, you can rest assured, we'll keep our eyes open for the most annoying fan bases and Twitter personalities over the next 365 days.
We'll put me in the bracket.
Yeah, we're going to put Brew on. Is that the fan base side or is that on the Twitter side?
Probably the Twitter side.
All right, we'll put this.
No, I'm improving. You know what? Hey, if everybody else does their part, maybe I can tone it down a little bit.
I think I'm going to put you in you'll be in the play-in game against somebody else. It's going to be outstanding. Okay, so we're going to lightning round this bad boy because my other projects here took longer than expected, and the light that I used to illuminate my face just ran out of batteries. So I just got darker. And
dude, we are so cable access TV.
We're so good. I love it. Since the majority of players that were drafted in the second round were disasters this year because of injuries, Whiteside, John Wall, Porzingis, Cousins, Kyrie, CP3 in some leagues, Kawhi Leonard, Damian Lillard missed a month. Does it change how you plot your second round next year, or do you have to use this as a one-off? I'm speaking from kind of a point of personal pain here because all of my teams are above the halfway point. At least in there, I think I might have a league or two that like
No. I think all my teams are like above the half, so like top half of the league. I have I got crushed by situations. I got crushed by Kawhi Leonard, like 4 different important teams. And that was me gambling. And I think we can all look back at that and say, this is like an unprecedented situation that really, like, when we heard about this thing, at minimum, just cut us quick. Like, just say he's out for the year on like the 3rd week or something. The fact that it just kept going is just unprecedented. And so because of that, I've hit on so many late rounders. I mean, the Joe Ingles, the Torian Princes, basically the Hoop Ball 6, Kelly Olynyk, and Justin Holiday was good. So I got all these productive players all the way down the line, and I'm still, just I have this gaping hole in my 2nd round pick. And so it does make me think about all your podcasts, Dan, where you say, don't take that risk.
Just the first 3 rounds was how I felt on it. I just felt like it can be such a debilitating thing if an early first 2 or 3 round pick ends up crushing you. But, I mean, Kawhi's a weird situation because he may be 100% healthy next year, and if you could get him in the 3rd round, I know damn well you would.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, like, when you go pay, what did I pay for Steph Curry, in the FBA championship? I paid some ridiculous amount for him in an auction draft, and he won me my league. And I think a lot of people looked at that and said, well, it's still Steph Curry. He's got that ankle issue. We don't know how healthy he, really can be. Do you make this massive bet on one player that could spin your season? And I won my league, against a bunch of ringers. And so it's cut both ways for me. And so what I'll do is I'll sit and I'll look at each individual situation, and I'll try not to get attached to one methodology over the other. I'll try not to be afraid to pull the trigger if there is a Kawhi-like play next year. And at the same time, I'm going to try to, look at what the lesson for me, I think this year might be on that front is, can I win it without the risk? Are all the plays so good that, if I don't get this additional EV, I might look at it through that lens, but it's hard, man. If Kawhi plays in, the 2nd month of the season, then it's like I get first place across the board. So it's tough, man.
Well, let me ask you this then. I have a great answer
for you right now.
Let me ask you this, and then we'll try to lightning round the rest of these. What you said just a moment ago, if Kawhi plays in those leagues, you're probably in first place. What if it wasn't Kawhi? What if it was someone else you could have drafted in that same spot? Would you be in first place then also? Like, what if it was Damian Lillard or something like that? I don't know where you took Kawhi, but just pick another guy around him in the draft. Would that have also moved you into first place without the risk?
I mean, I'd have to just go back and look at the numbers, but there's a very good chance, yes.
Yeah.
The news reporting on Kawhi shifted during a lot of those drafts too. Like early 3 weeks before the season, I don't think we had this kind of doomsday sort of a deal. A day or two before the season, things were getting a little bit cloudy there. And in one particular case, in a big stake, 2 big stakes leagues, I was still betting on the value here is too significant to pass up. So my belief at the time was, this is San Antonio. They have a history of being weird about injuries. Nobody's really just disappeared for a year. Like, yeah, there might be some hiccups here, but not the type of hiccups that we ended up seeing. And you know what? You get them wrong. And on that one hurt me quite a bit. But there's like that list you just listed off. That's a murderer's row, man, of just things like Miles Turner killed people. I mean, Chris Paul's been kind of good, but he killed people. I mean, even Jimmy Butler, great year. Then in key, territory for fantasy playoffs, he's killed people. I know that was a lot of, whenever I got, unfortunately, a lot of 11 and 12 picks this year which I just absolutely hate. But those types of things, they do kill you. I don't think you could, but like if you were to try to dodge that many players in the second round, you just can't.
Yeah, you can't. I think I'm with you on that one. Do you see any changes happening in the first round?
I think we have to see how free agency shakes out, but there were a lot of first round. I mean, look at LeBron. LeBron's the best example of this. LeBron, I don't think anybody really predicted him to have this kind of a season. An 8th pick kind of guy at best. Probably slid down to 12 in some leagues. He was able to make a case for number one, because what if, everybody basically leaves the team and he's the last guy standing and he's doing everything from the jump. He did that. And so like when you have a bottom of the first round player that can reach up and get into number one, that just tells you that the first round is very stacked with possible elite talent. And that was the case this year for the first year, really, in a while. Usually it's a group of like 3 to 5 players that have that chance with a stat set that can support it. Something about the Warriors being clumped up, I think, helps that. As we've seen with the Rockets, them having, the ability to put James Harden into a number one position in fantasy rankings is it's highly unusual, but it speaks to the talent that they have and the offense that they run, and about what James Harden is as a basketball player now with how good he is. So I think that we just have a lot of first rounders that'll be in the mix. Now we have to see like what will happen with a lot of those guys. Do they change coaches? Do they add another stud to their team? Like you, I'm actually very excited for this season to end so I can start to build the outlines for the Bruski 150 and get through free agency and really start to do this again.
I'm going to jump over. We got some questions on insanely deep dynasty and rookie type of stuff. We can approach that as the draft approaches. Doesn't need to jump the gun on some of those things. I want to try to hit the questions here that I think are most interesting for this last live show of the year. A betting question surfaces here for you. We talked a little bit about it earlier on, and it is, do you then see, because it feels like you like Boston to maybe surprise a few people in that first-round matchup. Do you like them as a potential betting target in their first-round series? Because people will probably undervalue them going into it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you got a classic injured star theory going on. You have a really good backup point guard in Terry Rozier. You have length on this team. You've got a smart veteran in Al Horford. You've got role players like Aaron Baines. Marcus Morris is not chopped liver. Even their young guys aren't complete zeros, even though they're probably not playoff rotation worthy. And guys like Gina Gershon, Yabusele, and
I like that one.
I know you do because you're my age. I have, and you have Brad Stevens and home court advantage. I mean, everything is sitting in a perfect spot. I think Vegas might be smart enough to recognize that. So I don't know what the ROI will look like, but Boston's a kind of public team. I don't know, Dan, you might be able to speak to that more than I could, but I have a trip up to Reno to collect my funds. And then probably turn around and put a wager on those guys.
Yeah, might as freaking well. Should I drop Blake Griffin? I think you probably should have already.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they've got nothing to play for and all sorts of chaos there. That's
an easy one. Rashawn Holmes or Kevon Looney if I'm targeting defensive stats?
Ooh, that's a good one, man. Kevon Looney he missed that game with the illness, and that was kind of a weird one, like, was it really illness or, are you just resting? It feels like the Warriors might have more rest planned or rest potential for Looney than Holmes, who I think Holmes is just going to get run out there the rest of the way.
All right.
I'm going to go with Holmes here. It's close. I like Looney a lot. I think that both of these guys are going to be good.
It shall be Rashawn. Blocks, Jared Allen, John Henson, or Kyle O'Quinn. That's the only category I need.
me quickly look at the games remaining. The games remaining for New York is they've got 4, and then Jared Allen has 3. I was leaning Kyle O'Quinn anyway, and then the third option there was
John Henson.
Yeah, I don't think I would. Yeah, Henson. I mean, they got 3. Yeah, this is a clear Kyle O'Quinn.
Joel Embiid, where do you think he gets drafted next year?
I don't think people are going to hold this injury against him, and I don't think that they're going to. I think they're going to look at this year as a massive success, even though the numbers don't really bear that out. You know, he was taken in the second round in a lot of drafts, probably more comfortably at around 25. I think was probably where he was taken in most drafts, so right on the turn of the second and third round. And that's kind of where he is in terms of value. I haven't looked it up recently, but you know, that's because there haven't been quite the this guy's stat set was something else. I mean, he did everything, and it just hasn't quite taken that Giannis-like leap. I think that he's looked slow at times. I think that he hasn't been able to handle the workload, and so I think he'll be overvalued in next year's draft. I think you're talking about still a serious injury risk, and then you've got just a complicated situation with players, like who do they bring in, and they've already got too many players, and how does that impact Joel Embiid?
Interesting. Yeah, really high turnovers, and the free throw number hasn't quite gotten up to that next threshold that could sort of catapult him another round higher or so. And the last question that I want to hit on in today's show, again, apologies to those of you who asked very specific and sort of out there questions, eliminating those for today's program. I just kind of want to keep it on target. And that is, the Atlanta Hawks have been kind of a mess lately. Taurean Prince is now dealing with a back injury. We've seen a little bit of Damian Lee. We've seen Isaiah Taylor not look all that interesting. Is there anybody on the Atlanta Hawks that you actually think is worth deploying the rest of the way, provided Taurean Prince misses time? If he doesn't miss time, obviously he's a guy that's on your list. But let's assume he's not playing. Anybody else make the cut? Yeah, they're messy out there.
I mean, like the big men, like, you know, Dedmon and John Collins.
Yeah.
I mean, even Muskie, Mike Muscala. Good.
That's true.
I think those 3 are kind of what they are. So those they're definitely worth a look. I think that you're looking at Isaiah Taylor and Tyler Dorsey, just trying to troll for whatever value you can get out of those guys. Man,
yeah,
they're tanking so hard.
So I'm going to write this one down as Bruski vomited on air, said, "Why do we have to do this?" and then wrapped it up. Huh? How does that sound? Is that about right?
Hashtag FML.
Yeah, silly season. That, I think, will about do it for us on today's program, the final live show of the 2017-2018 NBA season. Bruski, final thoughts as we put a bow on another year of live Friday programming that actually saw me learn how to use an encoder this time around.
I'm very thankful and grateful for all of our readers, listeners, watchers.
Yeah.
Everybody that supports us. This is a labor of love, and it's also, it's an organization with very big ideas and a lot of people pulling in the same direction. And we hope to solve some of the things that we were bitching and moaning about earlier with the idea that, if the right combination of people come together, that you can form something that stands for stuff, that stands for quality, that stands for effort, and not the stuff that the old market has produced and really left a lot of quality people, writers, producers, content people. It's really left a lot of people out there in the lurch. And so your guys' support helps us keep moving that forward. And so, from my seat, this thing's really grown to be way bigger than me, and I'm just kind of a small piece of it now. I'm orchestrating, but obviously just so many great people that are a part of it. And I pinch myself on a daily basis just knowing that I am a part of it, and these people have put their time, their effort, their energy, their passion into this project. And so I just, I can't say enough about being a part of it. And as far as our listeners and readers and everybody goes, I cannot thank you guys enough. And we are going to continue to roll out new stuff. We have that big forum upgrade that's coming here, I believe, this weekend.
Oh, boy.
Don't quote me on that, but we're starting to build out player profiles, and the way that we do our blurbs is drastically changed over the on the inside and the internal side as we prepare for an expansion of the hoop ball blurbage getting out there into other facets of this basketball universe, and bringing in the statistical experience as well is a huge step for us as we kind of check off each box that we have, and preparing for the new industry, what it means and where it's going. And we have a lot of huge ideas for that. And the finishing move on this is going to be when we bring it all together and really start going out and hunting the big names that we want to hunt to bring on board with this thing, and having the platform built out, sort of like building a city. You got to get all the different pieces of infrastructure in place.
That's
and then,
right. We need plumbing.
Set it up.
Plumbing's first.
Yeah, exactly. Are we the plumbing?
Yes. I'm definitely the plumbing.
I saw something that said it was a preview for Jumanji. It was the emoji movie, and I heard nothing but how terrible it was.
Yeah,
but
that
there was
won
this
the
tweet I almost sent out but didn't. It was the actor Patrick Stewart, who plays Picard in Star Trek. He's the poop emoji. Yeah. And so there was like a poop joke, and then him and his little poop emoji, they leave whatever this group of people are chanting, "We're number 2, we're number 2."
Oh, for heaven's sake. That's the plumbing.
I thought Patrick Stewart was just shunned for an Oscar in that role. The great Sir Patrick Stewart.
What a snub. I'm trying to think of there's a name, and it's not going to come to me. If it was going to, it would have already popped into my head. They give out an award for the worst movies of the year.
Oh, Razzies.
The Razzies, yeah. Emoji Movie won it for this past year. Not surprisingly, I don't think.
I'm so concerned about Ehrlich. I forget Ehrlich's real name. TJ Miller.
Yeah.
And I finally caught up on what they did with him on Silicon Valley. They sent him to
Tibet.
Buddhist, to Tibet, and he starts doing drugs, and they just leave him there.
Did he do a voice in the Emoji Movie? Is that what popped?
He was the main guy.
Oh, okay. So there you go. Yeah. So anyway, we're the plumbing, Bruski. I'm sorry, I interrupted
we're the plumbing,
you.
And to close that off, just thank you guys, and keep an eye out for all this new stuff as we seek to make our mark in this industry. And I think that I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and so I hate to follow that by saying, don't worry, everybody. Just because the live shows are over doesn't mean the podcast is done. But that is kind of what I have to say next, because Bruski put such a nice bow on everything. But we'll be right back with you on Monday. Fantasy NBA Today is not going anywhere. We're going through the whole offseason as well. This is just the last time you're going to see us live for a little bit, because fantasy basketball is not going to be happening for a little bit, starting on Wednesday of next week. Unless you're in one of those fun playoff formats. Those are goofy, but we're not going to be breaking those down. He is Aaron Bruski. I am Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today, live on Fridays. Thank you, as Aaron said, to everybody that's listened and chatted and retweeted and liked and whatever can kind of help us grow into the community all season long. We have enjoyed working with each and every one of you. Have a lovely weekend. I'll talk to you soon.